So the other night, I was actually I awoke from a perfectly good sleep with a fart, and I started thinking about it. I farted, and I was like, man, that was really warm. It was really warm, and then and I was like, oh, it's gonna stink. And then it hit me. I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom like right now. It was 4 a.m, and I mean, it was just blown apart. And no, I don't know what it was. I have no idea. I felt fine after that, but I was wondering. It got me to thinking. And if this is in the bonus content, maybe somebody can answer, or maybe one of you guys can. When that war, those extremely hot farts you have, like those sick farts, I wonder what the temperature is of those. Is that, you think it's like 98.6 and it just feels hotter coming out? Or do you think it's hotter than that? Because it makes sense it would be 98.6, right? I mean, that's.
I don't know, but I know on the way to work this morning, after this morning's episode, I'm like, dude, I'm like halfway down Manchester, right? I'm in between like Normandy and Sicily. And I was just like, oh, like you raise up a little bit to let one out. And like, dude, I started to let it out. And then it was automatically like, nope, don't do it. Don't do it. As soon as I got to work, as soon as I got to the, like, I went straight and I was already running late. I'd already texted my boss and be like, hey man, I'm in the hurt locker this morning. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to be a little late. Dude, I didn't even go straight. I didn't even go to my office to drop my bag or anything. Like, I dumped that in the hallway with my coffee cup, like outside the bathroom door, and like had to go in there and like, like kind of clean up a little bit. Like, it was.
That's one of those that as you start to squat, it's fucking shooting out. You're like, oh.
Oh, yeah. Dude. Oh, yeah. It sounds like a cow pissing on a flat rock.
Yeah.
I don't know what Luke's saying.
It wasn't important. Did you see me doing this?
Oh
my God. No, it's asshole. That's called asshole radar. The closer you get to the toilet and you do the move, the move where you're down and you squat it and it comes out. That's the move, man. That's smooth.
Well, I'll start carrying around a non-contact thermometer, and I'll put one beside my bed. The next time I let out one of those warm, juicy ones, I'll like beep.
Yeah, a little laser.
Beep. Actually, you know what? I'll do it this summer. it'll be in the middle of the night. Beep. What are you doing? Don't worry about it, babe. Dude, what is that noise? It's the fucking smoke alarm. Batteries are going out.
It's Culper's Canteen Cup Science Project.
I remember, man. So like, there was one time, I forget, I can't remember if it was Afghanistan or Iraq, one of the two, but we just come back from an objective, and it's summer, it's fighting season, it's hot, and I come off the striker, and there's like from between the striker and the porta potties, it's just a trail of kit, right? So like vest, it's like ballistic helmet, it's gloves, like it's just like I'm running. I'm sitting there and it's so hot. Dude, it's like 120 something degrees. I've got the door of the porta potty like propped open with my foot. Like people are walking by and they're like, "Oh my God, shut the door! What are you doing?" I was like, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe. It's so hot, dude." I was like, "I'm gonna suffocate to death." It was so bad. I was like, I couldn't tell if it was the sweat running down my back or the poo running up. Man, it was just, it was not good. Like it was.
We used to call it the hot box in Haiti because it'd be so fucking hot, dude. And you go in there, and of course, all they had was porta potties, and you'd come out and you were just like drenched. You're like, did you just shit all over yourself, or are you just sweating?
Yeah, it's like, dude, you couldn't breathe in there. It was bad, man. Like it was bad. It was like Che's Revenge and in snafus, food bars, tarfus, and other sordid tales.
Hey, we need to do another plug of the book too. Do another plug of the book on this episode.
I just did. Was that not a plug? Was that not an appropriate plug?
Well, it's not going to make it to the fucking podcast. So for the other 150 listeners, which we actually have, not just for the 41 YouTube viewers we have, do another plug. Hey, great Christmas gift. What other holiday? It's great for Columbus Day.
So we just sold another one.
I didn't see it logged, but
one of my Facebook friends, the day or yesterday.
We'll see if it's shipped or if they're lying. So if 2020
So-
was a food, what food would it be? I think it would be sun-bleached dog turd.
Is that a food?
I would say I would say soggy, cold lima beans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I would go with.
Tofu.
You know what? I did find some extra firm tofu yesterday, and it fucking made my day. So I'm just, just to say.
I'm thinking about, I'm honestly, and Luke's probably gonna lose his shit and
Here we
say
go.
some dumb. But I am seriously considering grabbing some and trying it.
Tofu?
Try it, man.
Yeah.
You got to do it the right way, though, because I tell you, like, I was never a big fan of it. And then I got on, this vegan shit or whatever. The key is spend the fucking $10 and get the tofu press, because once you press all the water out of it and then you go and you cook it, whatever you put in there, dude, it soaks it up, and that's what it fucking tastes like. So you put some like fucking barbecue sauce in a frying pan, it soaks that shit up, and you're eating a chicken McNugget.
How much do you eat a week, would you say, if you could think weight-wise? I'm just curious.
I mean, I definitely put in over 2,000 calories a day. I mean, I probably hit about 20.
Just in tofu?
No,
I'm talking just in
tofu.
tofu.
Just in tofu, I do probably at least 36 ounces a week and no more than 48 ounces.
That's really not that bad.
No, but the key is like if I take, so like a serving of the extra firm tofu is about 12 ounces, give or take 12 to 14, depending on what you buy. But the 12 ounces of tofu, that will take me from lunch to dinner, and you're fucking stuffed, and it's like 300 calories.
Well, here's a little tidbit for the Culper's Canteen Cup bonus footage. This is great. You're really letting you behind the curtain here. With any kind of soy product, my body's like super sensitive to it, right? So if I'm on vitamin S, hormone replacement, I'll eat tofu just fine. But if I eat soy products, like if I drank a cup of soy milk a day for a week, my nipples would start getting sensitive because, dude, my body just converts that shit to estrogen so fast your fucking head spins, man. It's fucking crazy. So I have to be careful with soy. I really do, man. But whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll have to shoot you some fucking. We're not going to talk about fucking Luke lactating and shit. I'll shoot you a couple of things, Josh. Where it's like if you do it right, it's pretty fucking legit, man.
I'm thinking, dude. I mean, I tell you, I've been thinking about it because. So like I started looking into like, probiotics and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think it's, a lot of it has to do with. Nicole's dad having a quadruple bypass, and then like, her mom coming down with cancer. It's like a lot of that stuff. And I was home this past weekend down at my parents' place, helping my dad do a bunch of stuff that, I mean, he can kind of still do it, but he doesn't need to be doing it.
Right.
He doesn't need to be out on the tractor, just bush hogging, 10 acres. Like he doesn't need to be doing that. He doesn't need to be on the roof of the barn, pressure washing. He doesn't need to be,
right.
Just out there, mowing grass, like, those things like that. So I went down and knocked out a bunch of that stuff for him. And, just like, seeing this, like, fuck, man, it's like, again, like I need to, I just want to be able to wipe my own ass when I'm 80. And so, I need to, I need to go ahead and do that groundwork now for that. 'Cause every day, man, I'm not getting any younger.
Well, and for the viewers out there, that's the whole point. So I went, mainly the same thing Josh was talking about. It's mainly for the health reasons. I historically have some high blood pressure and this and that. And so I went to a vegan diet, generally speaking, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sundays is game time. So I can eat, I'll eat burgers or whatever. And I'm not so strict about them. If we go to a restaurant, if we go to a steakhouse on a Wednesday, steak, you know what I mean? But I'm not doing it because I'm trying to, save the cows or reduce the methane or whatever. I'm doing it, for my own health or whatever. So, but I would tell you, it's kind of like both of you are saying with the whole diet thing. I mean, dude, it's immediate. Like I can tell you that I am in a Hurt Locker on Monday morning because of the meat and the cheese and the milk over the weekend. Versus once I get through Monday morning, I get to the afternoon and I've kind of gone through my, whatever, lots of vegetables and that stuff. Like your body gets back to normal and I feel good. I mean, bowel movements, all that stuff, everything's fucking rock and rolling. And I feel great to fucking Saturday. And then Saturday, I throw down that double cheeseburger and some French fries and fucking whatever, and I'm in a Hurt Locker, all weekend. And it's pretty wild, man, because it's pretty immediate difference.
Yeah. Speaking of, so I don't know that we did the math or the percentage, but the
we got to bring that up during the podcast. We start off with that. We'll kick off with that.
Okay. I don't know. Well, you were talking about the viewers out there, so you sound like you were going to put this on the podcast, Hero.
Was it percentage of body weight or what?
Yeah, percentage that you lost.
Okay. Well, Luke probably still won.
Well, I don't know. I'm not good at math. Leave that to the Asian.
I don't do math or percentages either.
Jesus. So. All right. So, what did you start out with, Luke?
214. No, it's 202. Was
hold on
end.
Fucking piece of shit pen. There we go.
Oh, you're not even using your abacus.
You started at 214 and you're at what now? Or what did you end at?
202.
So 12 pounds.
Same as Rocky in Rocky 2. Josh started at 240.
Okay. And then Josh, what were you at?
I was I think 223.
And would you end up at?
211.
Oh shit.
I'm pretty certain Luke won.
Well, I'm starting a workout program, so actual going to the gym. So
bro, I got my
that.
Dude, I got my squat rack in, and I also got my my heavy bag in my punching bag. So tomorrow morning, man, it's for 30 minutes. It's 2 minutes on the bag, 1 minute off for 30 minutes.
That's pretty good.
Part of Patrick Ewing's weight loss program over there is going to be doing this podcast 3 times a week.
And it's even getting cooler here, man.
Bitches.
It's even getting cooler here, and it's still fucking.
Why don't you move like upstairs or something where it's cooler?
Because it echoes too much, man. There's not a good room upstairs to do this in.
Don't you have a fan?
Why don't you go sit outside? Why don't you sit outside?
I don't know, man. I like it. I like sweating. No, man. I'm waiting for the weather to cool off. That's it.
No, you don't, dude. You look fucking miserable.
Do you not have a fan?
It's okay. No, not down here.
Do you not have one you can move down there?
No.
Motherfucker, you don't have an old box fan?
No.
I'm going to see.
Look, man, I wanted GSO to give me one, so I waited for 3 weeks to wait for their fucking fan. And I was told 2 days ago, we can give you a transformer, like a power converter, but not a fan. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Okay, I'll go out and buy a goddamn fan. I'm going to have to.
Hey, I'm going to find one of those when I was a kid going to church, especially when I'm with my grandparents. It was a little old clapboard church that had like 2 window AC units in it.
Yeah. Swamp.
And dude, and so it was like it was fine during the winter, dude. But come June, July, and August in North Florida, like it didn't work. But you had those popsicle sticks with the cardboard cutout on it, and always had like some flowers and a Bible verse on it. You just sat there like the whole service, and you're like fanning yourself. I'm gonna see if I can find some of those. I'm gonna send them to you.
Yeah, send them, man. Send them over.
You can get some Jesus and at the same time.
I gotta tell you this. Okay, so the dip pouch mystery solved. Okay, so check this shit out. Okay, and I had to have somebody explain this to me 3 times. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So, okay, we have a dip pouch, okay, but the dip pouch we use goes through the diplomatic postal service. Okay, so it's the same rules as an APO. They just pay for it differently. So technically it is a dip pouch, but like traditionally it's not. So very few embassies, well, not very few, but embassies like ours don't use the dip pouch service, like the actual one where State Department sends all that shit out and they pay for it. With most smaller embassies, the State Department contracts out to the diplomatic, postal, whatever, and that's through USPS, and they do additional security and all that stuff, so you can still send sensitive items through there. But it's the same rules as the APO. So it is a dip pouch, but it's not a dip pouch. And when the guy explained that to me, I'm like, hold on, dude. So is it or is it not a dip pouch? He goes, oh, yeah, it is. I was like, but the rules, he's like, no, it's the same rules as APO. I was like, so it's not a dip pouch. He's like, yes, it is. And it's fucked up, dude. So you can send. So Roger, I mean, okay, so if you're sending to like a regular dip pouch, like to Moscow, yes, you cannot send liquids because that's contracted through the State Department. But if you're sending dip pouch here, you can.
Okay.
I thought that was funny.
God, this dude is sweating.
You got this glisten.
You should do this in a white beater.
I don't have one. Next time I go to the PX, I'll get some. Next time I go to the PX.
What size do you wear?
Fucking small, dude.
Medium.
Medium.
Make it nice and tight.
Probably, if I'm going to wear a wife beater, I'm going to wear a large one, not an extra large, because I want that shit to be a little bit tight, especially around the gut.
They always make those things fucking small anyway. Like even with an extra large, like it doesn't get bigger up here; it just gets longer. That's all it does. You get like a double extra large, it's just going down to your knees. It doesn't get bigger up here.
Hey, you have to wear one of those with your cargo shorts.
That's all I have, man. That's all I have.
Oh, all right, let's do this shit. Who's doing the intro?
Josh, you haven't done that in a while, have you?
I'm pretty sure I
don't think Luke's done it in a while.
But I'll do this one.
Going back and forth between us, like, hey, Roger, you haven't done it in a while, have you? Hey, Josh,
I'll do it. I'll do it.
It's his contribution.
Since he stopped doing the outline, because that was so hard.
You guys said you didn't need one. Okay.
I'll do it. You do it. It doesn't matter, man.
Well, I'm going to mute my shit.
Whichever one.
One, two, ready? 1, 2, 3. Does that mean I'm doing it or you doing it? Josh does it.
I was about to say,
hey, Josh, we're on episode 32.
32. All right, got it. All right, when do y'all want to start?
Motherfucker, whenever you're ready.
Bitches. The time, man, because we only go 2 hours.
I'm tracking this shit. I got this.
No, we don't want to go 2 hours.
Fucking work on muting your fucking keyboard clicking over there.
All right, so I'll start it, and then once I get into the topic a little bit, who wants it first?
I've got this thing from the 9/11 Memorial Museum.
I'll kick it to Luke.
So I have I can read, they've got a paragraph and a half, like what happened at 9/11, type of thing. I just read it straight from them.
All right, so I'll kick it to Roger. I'll do the intro and everything, and then kind of what the episode's about. We want to bullshit. Well, we'll bullshit, whatever, dude. All right, I'll kick it to you after that. Now we got to wait for him to get back. There he is. I didn't know if he went to go get a glass of water to rehydrate or something.
He's going to start wearing a Camelback on the episodes.
I want to see the sign behind you, Luke. It says what he
going
can
hiking
is
again
down
or
there.
what? He's like, I'm getting ready to go podcast. I'll be back.
He's got his salt tablets. Oh, all right. Here we go. All right. All right, everybody, and welcome back to episode 31 of Culper.
Yep, 32.
It's 32, isn't it? God damn.
Oh, God.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Culper's Canteen Cup. I want to thank Carlton Zeus for that intro music. Carlton, I don't know how many people are actually listening to us, so I don't know if your music's doing any good, but we definitely appreciate you letting us use it anyway. I want to thanks to all you canteeners out there for listening to us, supporting us, through these months. I think we're up to seven listeners now. So I tell you what, for those of you listening out there, if you could do us a favor, if you could share our social media, share our podcast on your social media posts, tell your friends, tell your family. Hopefully they won't disown you once they listen to a couple of our podcasts. They won't be upset with you. Definitely want to give a shout out to some of our, hopefully some of our new Kosovar followers. I'm gonna give a shout out to you guys, whether you're in Skopje, whether you're hanging out down in Northern Macedonia, whether you're hanging out in I don't want to say Mirosevac because that's for the Serbian listeners. Yeah, whether you're sitting up in Pristina, yeah, right. So you guys, man, big news for you guys, kind of formalizing the relationship between you and Serbia, trying inking that economic bill. Thank you, President Trump, for that. And yeah, right. So lots of good things happening for Kosovo, up and coming. You guys getting on your feet, doing your thing, and we like to see that. We like to hear that. Any countries that are kind of formalizing relations, making peace with one another is a good thing. So, hey, we got a special episode for you guys today. Obviously, everybody knows that that today is September the 11th. And any person who was alive back in September 11th, 2001 knows why this is a special day, knows why it's near and dear to us, especially, being former military guys. And so what we want to do is we're going to kind of take this episode and kind of dedicate it, commemorate the attacks of September 11th, 2001, kind of give you kind of, where were we at, and a little bit of what happened, and, kind of the aftermath, what happened afterwards. And so with that, I'm going to kick it over to Roger. I think Roger's going to.
Hey, thanks, Josh. And before we get into that, I mean, I kind of wanted to touch base, and we weren't even going to talk about it, but, you brought up, as far as Serbia and the Kosovo and that type of stuff. I mean, it seems like we've got like a lot of peace going on around. I mean, there's a lot of treaties being signed. You look at what's going on with Israel, get UAE, Sudan, right? I mean, I read that the other day, and it makes you wonder. I mean, I'm not a big follower of the Sudan, so it's not like, I track their news every day, but, I wondered, did Luke, and you may be more privy to this. I mean, did the Trump administration have anything to do with that? When I read into it, they didn't mention anything, but it just seems like it's just come out of nowhere all of a sudden. So I don't know. You think the administration had anything to do with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. If I had to guess, with what Trump's got going on on the side with during the whole Israel UAE deal, coupled with Serbia Kosovo, that deal, I'm sure it factored into it somehow. I'm like you. I probably didn't read as much as I should have on the Sudan thing. In fact, I think I only saw it today from Gene's post. But yeah, it's shocking. I mean, it's people are going to find a reason to poo-poo all over this stuff, but as I told the people on Twitter, I got a bunch of Kosovars talking to me about that. And, there's a little bit of a language barrier there. But, I'm just trying to tell them, hey, some progress is better than none. For a while, you're going to feel like you're getting the short end of the stick. But, you're normalizing economic relations, and it's just part of the process. So, I admire Trump in the administration for what he's doing. I'm a big fan of Rick Grinnell. Again, people are going to poo-poo it. What are you going to do? You look at the most vociferous, critics of the Serbia-Kosovo normalizing of economic relations. The three most are the Arab League, the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, and Turkey. It's like, okay, and the EU, as usual, are taking a very neutral stance on it and kind of, again, poo-pooing Trump. But what I was kind of, I don't know, not shocked, but that Trump actually got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Did you see that, Josh?
Yeah, I did. I was shocked when I saw it. Well, shocked maybe is not the word. That there was somebody out there who actually did it. I know it was a Norwegian government official. And he even came out and said, he's like, I don't necessarily like the guy, but he's actually done a lot of work, in that, and I can tell you, Luke, just as well. I know, Roger spent some time in Bosnia. We were in Kosovo right after the air war stopped, and I remember, right after the air war stopped, the Albanians and Serbians were still at each other's throats. They were still, killings here and there going on, and it was just a lot of animosity, a lot of hate there, and I get that may still be there. Obviously, I haven't been there since 99, 2000, but just to see that economic, those economic trade deals, agreements going on, like, that's a huge step forward for people who have hated each other for generations, and so I think that's huge. And I was glad to see Trump get nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. I know there's going to be a lot of detractors out there who, obviously are very, very upset with that. But I tell you, even larger than the Kosovo Serbia deal, the UAE Israel deal, like that. I tell you what, that right there is incredibly massive, and even Saudi Arabia, agreeing to allow the overflights, and everything. Like, I mean, that is truly massive. And what that does is that, that could redefine the Middle East, for decades to come. And it puts, Iran on notice. That's key. That it absolutely puts Iran on notice. Well, you've got other Arab nations starting to actually, do peace deals with Israel and recognize them as a country, as a nation. Like, that's massive. And a lot of that was through the efforts of the current administration. One of the most Israeli presidents that we've ever had. And just simple things. Move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. Right. It doesn't have to be these massive, heavy lift undertakes. It's just, hey man, simple. Guess what? Jerusalem's the capital of Israel. Done. Right. And so I haven't always agreed with everything that Israel does, but I've always been, a huge fan. And I'm glad to see us strengthening our ties with them, and I'm glad to see other countries in the region finally, putting down the sword, maybe picking up the pen a little bit to kind of normalize relations and stabilize the Middle East. Because, good Lord, we need it.
It's a little frustrating for me because there's so many distractions going over here in the U.S. I mean, just you look at the election cycle by itself is a huge distraction, no matter what year it is, just elections in general. But then the overall hatred, by the left over Donald Trump, and you're catching no media coverage of, Kosovo and Israel and UAE, and, this kind of segues it, back into our 9/11, people don't realize that when you look at Iran, when you look at Russia, division in the area, destabilization in the area, that's what leads to in Afghanistan. That's what leads to a 9/11. And so when you have, a lot of these things are, and we'll cover it a little bit on this thing, but when you look at 9/11, I mean, this stuff, you can go all the way back to the Carter Doctrine, right back to the late 70s, and really track it back there. Now I know there's some thread pulling and this and that, here and there, but my point is, a lot of times the foreign policy, your successes or failures, I mean, that really paves that road for events that happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And specifically when you look at Afghanistan, I mean, that's a prime example when you can, you look back at the Carter years, even going back to, when George, H.W. Bush was director of the CIA, and some of the decisions that were made there, and some of their philosophies really brought, Afghanistan to all the way up through 9/11, and obviously our involvement. So, huge news over there. And I'd say for our listeners, if you're not paying attention to it, definitely do some reading up on it. Try to capture it when you can. And it pisses me off. Shame on the media that even with like Fox News, you watch Fox News. I mean, there's nothing. I think there was like a blip on the UAE. I'm like, are you kidding me? Or even the whole Kosovo thing. I mean, all of us served there 20 years ago. It's like we're still dealing with this stuff. I mean, it's huge, and I think especially it puts it, to frame it, it really does put it into the whole, 9/11, that these successes, and I guess they're not tangible, right? You can never prove a negative. You can never say, well, because peace was made, another incident didn't happen. Unfortunately, you have events like 9/11. You can say, hey, I can actually track this back, 21, 22. I guess what Carter Doctrine came out, 76, something like that. So, 25 years ahead of time, or back in the past, where you can say, okay, this kind of paved the road for that. So, on to 9/11. It's for those of us that have been in service for several decades, and those that continue to serve, whether it be as a contractor like Josh, blood sucking contractor, or continues on as a as a as a civilian as Luke does. But a lot of us served during this time, and it was it's kind of crazy because there are a lot of different perspectives about 9/11, and even to what we're doing now. Because for those of us old timers, we were pre-war. We were a non-combat army. Like when I joined in '94. Okay, we weren't at war. I mean, my tours consisted of Haiti. Don't get me wrong, you had some skirmishes and things like that going on, but you didn't have a country that was declaring war against the U.S. and we're out there fighting on the front lines. When I went to Korea, obviously you had the 38th parallel and this and that, but again, it's not like we had mortars being fired at us down in Taegu or anything like that. And Bosnia, you had what was going on over there with just that whole region. But again, we weren't having mortars and rockets fired at us specifically. Just the main thing that you had to worry about was stepping on some, shithole landmine that was left over, from Srebrenica or something like that, right? So it's so for us, we really went from we use this term a lot. Actually, I haven't heard it lately, maybe some of the old school, but we were a garrison army back then. And what that means is we were an army that really wasn't at war. So it was a lot about starching the uniform. It was all about marching correctly, really living a letter of the law with the army regulations, like a professional military that wasn't in the fight. Kind of like being the practice player, right? For basketball or football or whatever. So you weren't really in the fight so much. And we really were they went from UTWA to, operations other than war, to SASO, sustainment and stabilization operations. So we were just a active combat military at that time. And then you go from there to 9/11, and there's a flip of a switch. We immediately went to, hey, we were in the fight. And so for those of us old schoolers, we saw that transition. But then I look at some of the youngins nowadays. This is the military they've grown up with. And I say army, I mean all the services, right? It was about the same with everybody. But you look at the new folks nowadays that, and not even new Joes. I mean, I guess with 2001, I mean, hell, they'll be retiring, right? You'll have folks that retired that have done their whole service with the military and the country being at war. Which is completely, it's incredible because they have no perspective of what it was like before 9/11. I even with my boy, who's my youngest, he's 18, and it's like, wow, I actually have to go back and explain a lot of this stuff to him, and he's asking a lot of questions now. But I can remember, it's like, wow, he wasn't even born, he wasn't even alive then. So all he's reading is what's in textbooks, and of course we know how that is, right? Half the stuff is being censored, the other half's being ripped out, and whatever. But it's having to explain that stuff to him. So before I get too deep into this, I'm at the 9/11 Memorial Museum. I'm gonna read the little paragraph here. They've got, what happened at 9/11, and I think that for those of us that were around at the time, we definitely remember exactly where we were at and what was going on at that time. So I'll read this, then I'll throw it to Luke, and he can kind of give you some of his perspective and what he was doing at the time. So from the 9/11 Memorial .org, which, by the way, I haven't been out there with the new building since it's been erected and all that stuff, and the pool. I was out there shortly after the attack, and man, it's mind blowing. I mean, it's just if you don't get a chance to get out there, I need to make it out there. You know, obviously I haven't been out there in years, but if you don't get a chance to get out there, definitely get out there, see the memorial, see the museum. They did have the museum up at the time. I think that might still be standing, and to see some of the wreckage, I mean, it's crazy. So from their page, what happened on 9/11? 9/11 is shorthand for 4 coordinated terrorist attacks carried out by Al Qaeda, an Islamist extremist group that occurred on the morning of September 11, 2001. 19 terrorists from Al Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airplanes, deliberately crashing 2 of the planes into the upper floors of the North and South Towers of the World Trade Center complex, and a 3rd plane into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The Twin Towers ultimately collapsed because of the damage sustained from the impacts and the resulting fires. After learning about the other attacks, passengers in the 4th hijacked plane, Flight 93, fought back, and the plane was crashed into an empty field in western Pennsylvania in about 20 minutes by air from Washington, D.C. The attacks killed 2,977 people from 93 nations. 2,753 people were killed in New York. 184 people were killed at the Pentagon, and another 40 people were killed on Flight 93. So that's kind of a gist of what happened there. Luke, where were you at when this happened? What was your thought process going on? And, how long did it actually take you to realize that, wow, we're under attack?
Well, I was in Kosovo at the time, and I had been there for a few months. We were actually on our back, our stretch, our home stretch. We had a couple months left, and up to that point, we can get into all this stuff later. It's a lot of complex thoughts, and it's a subject that hits home with all of us. We realize, all of us, what mistakes we made, what mistakes the leadership and even our national security apparatus, the mistakes that were made in countering terrorism at the time through the 90s right up to 2001. But for now, I'll address your question. Again, in Kosovo, I was in Ferazaj. That was what you were searching for there, Josh. Not. We don't say Jurosovac on this show. There's not one Serbian fan that I know of. So yeah, I was in Ferazaj. We'd go out there from Camp Bondsteel every day. So we were pretty close to the flagpole, and terrorism, force protection force protection threat at the time in Kosovo was really low because the Kosovo Albanians really loved us. And I think there were literally only about 6 Serbs still living in Ferazaj, and they were old folks and nobody cared. I mean, they were like in their 80s, and it was just like, everyone around them left them alone, just waiting for them to die because they were too old to move. So there was really no force protection threat. There were 2 mosques in town, but every time we wanted to do something against that, we were told no, that is absolutely not the priority. Why don't you focus on human trafficking instead? Smuggling, and not even smuggling weapons. It was like smuggling cigarettes and shit. So we were, working with the police pretty close on mainly criminal stuff, and it just, it was pretty boring, to be honest with you. Saw some interesting things, but when none of us will ever forget exactly where we were. I remember the street I was on. I could probably walk you there tomorrow, where one of our interpreters got a phone call. Most of the interpreters were from New York, as you guys know, at least Albanian interpreters. And which, let's be honest, I'm sure they were all mobbed up. Dude, come on. Those guys were the slickest dudes in the world. And I loved every one of them, by the way. Nino, love you, bro. Anyway, he got a phone call, from one of his many family members in New York, and they said, "Hey, man, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. Can you believe that?" And Nino was like, "Wow, that's crazy." And he hung up. He told us, and my thought went to, some Cessna ran into the world. That's immediately what I thought. I was like, "Dude, God, that's kind of messed up. Hope everybody on the ground's okay." And then, how many ever minutes it was? Actually, it was about half an hour later. He called and said, another one just hit the other tower, and literally at the same time, somebody called the other interpreter and said a plane just hit the Pentagon, and that's when I knew. I was like, okay, we're under attack. And at that point, I don't remember thinking, World War III, I thought it was terror, straight up. I was like, that's terrorism. And a thought occurred to me immediately. I mean, I kind of played it all out in my head, knowing that big planes had hit those. I knew what happened, dude. It was something we weren't looking for. And that's why it happened. That's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons it happened. I mean, the bad guys are smart, man. They're crafty. And they're intelligent, especially the planning cells. And they're going to look at the weakest link. They're going to look at what we are not looking at. They're going to be like, okay, how can we do this? And we just weren't looking for that. You look at all the TTPs that we used to learn, the anti-terrorism TTPs before that, were, the PLO and all these organizations were taking they were hijacking planes. They weren't killing them and crashing them into shit. So the TTP was get rid of your ID card, slide it into the whatever, and just be patient, comply, don't highlight yourself, don't do anything. And they knew that. So they used the planes as a weapon, obviously. And I'll tell you what, man, if you buy the book Snafus, Foo Bars, Tarfus, and other sort of tales, you can hear you can read, my experience and Josh's experience firsthand. But yeah, I'll tell you, I was shocked because, like Roger said, it was a garrison army up to that point, very risk averse, very risk averse. When it came to conflict, it was like steer clear. We don't want any soldiers hurt. So I was thinking, when we got back to Bonsteel the next day, because it took us that long to get on post from 20 miles away, I was thinking that night, or the next early the next morning, I was thinking they're not going to let us go back outside. We're going to lock up here on the base, and we're not going to do anything. I'll never forget when Chief Williams came in to give us, the brief of what he had gotten in the bub or whatever it was. It was like, okay, suit up and get your full on tactical on. We're taking out the 249s. We're taking out the long rifles. We're, loaded but not locked, and it's going to be a show of force. We're not going to sit back here. And I was like, oh fuck! I was like, okay, it's fucking on. And that kind of changed it all. As you guys know, that one day, them sending us back out, that was it. It was great. It was a good feeling. I could talk a lot more about how I felt that night, but I'll just fast forward real quick. I'm talking for a while, but I got to give a shout out again. We're giving the Kosovars a bunch of love today, but I got to give them a shout out, dude. So the planes hit. It was afternoon in Kosovo. The very next morning, later in the morning, about we got out to town about 10:30 or so. They had organized an anti-terrorism solidarity rally in the town of Ferizai. We estimated they got 20,000 people to this rally. They had made banners. They had found American flags, and they were waving them and just coming up to us. Some people were crying, hugging us, and it was just, I thought that was amazing that they organized a rally of 20,000 people without reliable internet at the time. Text messages were just coming around. They organized that quickly to show solidarity with us. That really meant a lot to me, and I'll never forget it. And it was quite a spectacle, I'll tell you. But from that point on, it was on. So that's what happened to me that day. You, Josh, I think you were in Honduras, right?
Yeah. So I was in Honduras. I was at Joint Task Force Bravo, which is hands down the best kept secret in the Army. And so I was on a 6-month, rotation. I'm not even going to call it a deployment. It was a TDY. I had, a hooch. Like I had a maid that came in and washed my clothes and ironed my clothes every day for me. Life was good. Our job was to go out and do threat assessments on various locations, most of them consisting of, places that everybody went for MWR trips. So, got to spend like a week in the Bay Islands, week hanging out at the Mayan ruins and stuff like that. But, so the morning of, I got up a little early so I could go work out. I normally went and, hit the gym in the evenings, but I got up that morning and went and did it because I think we were planning on going out and burning it down in the local bars that evening. So got up in the morning, went to the gym, went back, took a shower, got changed, and I was walking into the chow hall. Anyway, and got my biscuits and gravy because I'm a fat kid and I love my food. And I went over and got ready to sit down, and everybody it's like the lunchroom, in high school, right? Everybody's got their table. You don't sit at that table because that's where the football team sits, or that's where the soccer team sits, or whatever. And so, the J2 guys, we'd all had our own little table, and I go over there, and as I'm putting my tray down on the table, one of my buddies is like, "Dude, check that out, man!" He's like, "A plane flew into the World Trade Center," and you look up at the TV and you saw World, and my very first comment was kind of like along the lines of what you thought. It was like, how the hell did a little ass plane, like, how do you not see the World Trade Center? Right? You're looking at it, it's like, okay, this is a little ass prop plane, not paying attention, or got pushed off a wind, or somebody said, I'm checking out, and this is the way I'm going to go, whatever. Right? You think, oh, so we're sitting there, we're all BSing about it and talking about it, and as we were sitting there finishing up breakfast, we watched the second plane hit, and the entire chow hall, which was a little raucous, up until that point, it was dead silent. Like even the Honduras, even the local nationals that worked in the chow hall, they stopped serving food. Like everybody stopped and watched the TV. And our analyst looked at us and he was like, we need to go to the skiff. And because everybody knew, we all looked at each other and we automatically knew, like, this was not an accident. This was intentional. So we got up, everybody, put the trays up, and we went to the skiff. And I remember we didn't leave, we basically didn't leave the skiff for another like 48 hours. Because by the time we got there, somebody went and grabbed the actual J2, because he was a major, a special forces officer, and he wasn't in yet. So it's like, somebody go track him down. I was the NCOIC, so I was like, okay, go grab the major, go grab the actual J2, and I was already on the phone with the J3, saying, hey, here's what we're going to do to start tracking this thing, to see what's up. But in the ensuing 48 hours, man, it was a fog, because I didn't sleep, because it was automatically, you got guys going out, drawing ammo, stand to, basically what went from, this Kush rotation in, Honduras, where, you went drinking every night and hanging out, and, the biggest worry was getting your wallet stolen, went from that to, like, we're posting guards on everything, right? That was just because the SecDef came out at the time and was like, ThreatCon, double delta, everybody's getting strip search, felony stopped. And so honestly, it was surreal, man. I remember my parents talking about, they know exactly where they were at when they got the news that Kennedy was killed. And they always remember that. And I was like, man, it's crazy that you remember that. You just kind of like shrug your shoulders. You're like, that's weird. But now I know exactly how they felt, when they heard that JFK was shot and killed, when 9/11 happened. It was, yeah, man, it's still surreal, and it still feels like it was yesterday. It really does. So I don't know where Roger was during then. I don't know. He was probably like 50 years old at the time by then. And
whatever. Aren't I the youngest of the group, or am I middle? I know Luke's the oldest.
Luke's damn sure the oldest.
Yeah, so we'll just leave it at that. Luke's the oldest. No, I was actually working in a counterintelligence field office out at Fort Huachuca, and I still remember the soldier's name. And I remember prior to this, so we were having every year, you have your battalion training event or whatever, and everybody from the battalion comes in. And I remember kind of, I was an E6 at the time, and of course, as an E6, you know everything in the world, and you know everything in the Army, and so you make stupid ass comments that later you realize you're just a dumbass. But I remember stating before we left, I was like, wow, is it a good idea to have the majority of the Army's CONUS capability, CI capability, in one facility, one building, whatever? So I was actually at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and sitting in the skiff training area, sitting here looking around. I'm like, the slides. I was like, wow, I'm missing a soldier. So it's like, and I still remember her name. I was like, oh, well, I'll go to lodging. That's where they're staying at. And I'll go down there and make a phone call and bring her up or whatever. I go down there and the shitty Army lodging, you get the one channel, your one TV up there sitting in the corner that's all wobbly and shit. And I'm sitting there watching, and the first plane had already hit. So I didn't even know what was going on yet. I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow. And the lady behind the desk isn't even saying anything. We're just looking, and I see a plane, and kind of like you guys, like, somebody fly a Cessna in this thing, and you got to remember, I mean, the World Trade Center was also attacked in 1993. So there was a history of that happening there anyway, right? As far as terrorist attacks. So we already knew it was a target, but that wasn't the first thing that popped in my mind. I sat there and was like Josh, like, you got to be a dumb motherfucker to miss the goddamn, World Trade Center. I mean, that shit's kind of intentional. But at the time, it's all surreal. So you're not even processing any of that. I'm just like watching it. And then, I think it was, what was it, 20 minutes later or whatever, 17 minutes later, the second plane hit the other tower. Then it was like, holy shit. So she happened to come downstairs at the time. I picked her up, drove back to the skiff. And at that time, I mean, you didn't have TVs or, this is, pre-internet everywhere at every workstation or every desk or whatever. And the three was sitting there. I'm like, hey, sir, I think we just got attacked. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, how do you even explain that, right? You're just like, yeah, like, you're trying to tell them 2 planes flew in this thing or whatever. They come out. And at that time, I don't know if you guys remember, well, at least back here in the States, they shut down all the flights. So immediately Army came back, needed the CI capabilities. Like, hey, you guys got to get back to your field offices. And we had people from everywhere from Fort Lewis down to LA, down to Fort Huachuca, all over Texas, up at Fort Leavenworth. Well, none of us were flying back. So we all got rental cars and did a one-way rental. And, we trucked back across the country, and everybody got back. You rotated drivers or whatever, and everybody got back 2 or 3 days. But, so I definitely remember exactly where I was, but I remember the feeling because there was a time period there for probably several hours. You're like, wow, man, did that really happen? And especially with us being out at Huachuca, we weren't really under the flagpole. The headquarters was back east, and so the information was a little delayed. And again, this is back before you had internet everywhere at every desk, so everything was a little bit slow rolling for us that weren't there. On top of it, took us a couple of days to drive back. So there's just this whole time going on where it's like, wow, did this really happen? But it really makes me think. And I guess back then you didn't really have the comms, but think of like Pearl Harbor. I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, imagine if you had the comms back during Pearl Harbor, because that's exactly what happened, except that you obviously had another world event going on that was big time in the news. But, the news cycle was so slow back then because it was all paper. But you start thinking, it's like, wow, what if this is another Pearl Harbor? And what if that would have happened, back then when you had the comms that you had nowadays? So it's, it's actually pretty incredible. And I guess it takes me to, so we go from 9/11. And then right after 9/11, the president's basically like, hey, man, gloves off. We're going to war. This is happening. This is big time. So we go there, and now we've been there. Well, we're still there. So 2020 going on to 2021. So I guess we'll delve into, well, let me give you a little history first. So obviously we were coming out of Vietnam, and you guys, feel free to correct me. This is all just off some memories and some gurgling that I did and what have you. But coming out of Vietnam, and basically, you had the Carter Doctrine that was, hey, we can establish and use military force to protect our interests throughout the Persian Gulf. So for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with it, that's really called force projection, right? So we can send our forces out there. We're going to have some military folks. But, again, these are back in the days where the Vietnam folks, you were coming out of war. But for us, it's like, I remember the old days of hey, if a bad guy's coming up, hey, stop. Don't move. You fire. Remember, you pull your weapon out, and it's like, I'm going to shoot. And if they get closer, I'm going to lock and load. Stop. Okay, they keep coming closer. I'm going to point my rifle up in the air. I'm going to fire a warning shot. I mean, all that shit changed, overnight. But anyway, so you had Vietnam. The Soviets were obviously going into Afghanistan. Again, it's a part of that whole division thing we talked about when you talk about foreign policy. They felt they were losing control in Afghanistan, wanted to keep control of the region. Wanted to keep the Communist Party out there, so they got heavily involved. You can go back through the history of it. I mean, there were a lot of supporters, including the United States, of Afghanistan and the Mujahideen out there fighting against the Soviets. So that brings him in there. But there was an important piece where you had Team B that was approved by Director of the CIA, George Bush at the time. And it was, I believe it was the national security advisor at the time, Brzezinski, that said, this is going to be Russia's Vietnam. And so that was the goal of keeping the Soviets into Afghanistan, was that we were just coming out of Vietnam. We all know what was going on there. And obviously, the enemy being supplied and provided resources by others outside. And so we were going to do the same thing in Afghanistan. And, as the Soviets go through their, decade out there, we're arming these folks. We're training them. We're arming them. We're sending them equipment. We're sending them resources. We're teaching them as far as our TTPs. We're teaching them tactics. We're teaching them, guerrilla warfare. And what we're really doing is we're teaching them to fight against us when we come back. And then I think when you look at 1999, so you fast forward 1999, Al Qaeda and Taliban. There was, I think it was the UN Security Council. It was Resolution 1267. So they actually formalized that, hey, these both are terrorist entities, terrorist groups. Osama bin Laden back in Afghanistan. Then from there, you fast forward to, and this is pretty incredible. So this is, when you look at this timeline, it's kind of mind-boggling. September 9th, you had the leader, and I forget his name. I have to Google it. Masood, commander of the Northern Alliance, was assassinated on September 9th. And then 2 days later, you've got what happened at the world, our attacks here at the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and such and so forth. So when you look at that planning, it's like, hey, this wasn't just a one-off. I mean, this was a well-coordinated attack. Oh yeah, and Luke's just texting me now. So yeah, you had the Kenyan and the Tanzanian embassy bombings in 1998, or maybe that's Josh. Sorry, give credit to Josh. Thanks for inputting on the show and the podcast. But so you see all that, we get drug into it after 9/11, and now we've been there for 20 years. Going on 20 years, and it looks like, I think President Trump trying to pull us out, but it looks like we'll probably be there for several years after that. But let me throw it to Luke. I mean, 20 years. So let's get into some of the discussion on this. Why were we there? Why are we still there? And what's your thoughts? I mean, how much longer are we going to be out there?
That's a lot to cover, but I want to throw out a quote from Ronald Reagan, because when Roger said that about the Kenyan and Tanzanian embassy in '98, it was Josh who chimed in, but Roger couldn't tell which one it was, and Roger said, "Oh, thanks, Luke," or whatever he said, and Josh just goes crazy. It was me. I just want to remind Josh of Ronald Reagan, who said, "There is no limit to what a man can accomplish when he doesn't care who gets the credit." So, I mean, hey, if you hate Ronald Reagan, that's on you, bro. But it is what it is.
No one likes.
I want to touch on. Yeah, I see that now. So, I want to touch on a couple things before I kind of answer your question there, Robert. God damn, I'm just all over the place tonight. Roger.
You're fired.
So, you guys said some stuff that triggered a couple of things in my mind. If you guys out there, you Canteeners, haven't had a chance to go to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, you should check out a little graphic they have. It's a video of the air traffic control right after the second plane hit the World Trade Center, and watching those planes clear the sky. I mean, they cleared it in, like, I want to say it was an hour, and almost all planes were out of the sky. And watching that, I mean, it was absolutely astonishing, and all the credit to the air traffic controllers who did that, because they still can't figure out exactly how they made that happen in a somewhat safe manner. So check that out if you haven't been to the Smithsonian. One of the things that sticks out, Roger kind of said it, so did Josh, about being on a different footing. I think that was the first time I recall, watching the news that next morning when we finally got back. That's the first time I remember seeing a continuous news crawl, where it was just continuous crawl, continuous updates, everything that was coming through. And from then on, it never went away. I remember that. I think that was kind of the beginnings of the real 24-hour news cycle, which is kind of interesting. Now, I remember, I think it was the very next day, Rumsfeld was having a news conference. And I've always been interested in international affairs, of foreign affairs and stuff like that. So I paid attention to this stuff back then. And I remember the press corps was asking questions like, who's responsible for this? And they didn't know for sure. They had a pretty good idea. They said, was this state sponsored terrorism? Rumsfeld said, we don't know yet. It could be, but as soon as we determine, if that's the case, all options are on the table. I'll never forget this. One of the reporters said, and this hasn't been said very often. I've never been able to find where it was actually said in a situation like this. The reporter said, "Does that include nuclear weapons?" And Rumsfeld repeated, "All options are on the table." And I can't believe that didn't get more press back then. Basically, Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, was saying, "We're ready to nuke somebody." 24 hours later, we're ready to nuke somebody. And I think that was the right call. It really sent a loud message to the rest of the world. I think that was the right call. And I think that was very apt for him to say that at the time. Real quick. So check this out. I got a message from good old Robert, who reported to Infantry Bolick today. We're talking about young soldiers, in the post 9/11 age. And he says, he really likes Columbus. Dumb kid, man. Dumb kid. Hey, shout out to Robert, man. Tell all your second lieutenants to listen to the show. Shout out to Scott too. Stop being so sensitive. Yeah. So why were we there? I think we had to go for a number of reasons. It became very apparent we've we've allowed this safe haven to exist. Taliban's a hardline government. That was an easy call. It's time to go in and take that safe haven away. And do it as soon as possible, as quick as possible. And I think we did a pretty good job early on in doing that. There's a pretty good book, a lot of good books out there on the initial stages. One is by I can't remember, Sean Naylor, maybe Relentless Strike. It kind of lays out some things that happen early on, some planning that I think the community had been planning for that, for something similar to that for a long time. They pulled a lot of stuff out of their asses to get there real quick and to start hitting the problem head on, because that goes to kind of a subconscious reason that we went in to begin with. And I honestly believe this is part of the reason we went into Iraq, because what am I always saying about the US? We're high octane, and we want, when we get punched in the nose, we're going to come back with a bat and we're going to knock your freaking head off. And we needed that as a country. We needed to see explosions. We needed to see our troops kicking ass and all this stuff. So initially, the real reason is, to eliminate the safe haven, obviously, get it under control, try to bring some semblance of, democracy or whatever you want to call it to that area, which we can talk about that. We could probably talk for hours on that. But, obviously that's dragged out. We're coming up on, 19 years of being there, like boots on the ground in Afghanistan. I think there's been a number of turning points where we could have made a lot of better calls. I remember for a time there, 2004, 2005, although you still had the lone survivor stuff going on there and there were some bloody attacks, Afghanistan was kind of under control compared to, I'll say what it was like 2 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or 7 years ago. I mean, it's just, we had the opportunity to get out while the getting was good, but we were still kind of transitioning, and then you had the Iraq war, which threw a wrench into the works. I think some neocons, honestly, got involved and were thinking they were going to squeeze Iran by being on both sides of them. Backfired horribly. I don't know if we're going to get into, all the mistakes we've made here in Afghanistan, or there in Afghanistan and Iraq. We'll stay away from Iraq, I think, in this episode most likely. But it's kind of disheartening having been around from the very beginning until now. I'm not saying people have forgotten, but the attitude has definitely changed, and that's natural. It's natural, but it was a very good time to be a soldier back then. Everybody loved the troops, and they actually did support the troops. It wasn't just a phrase for a few years there until people soured on Iraq. And you could write Oakley. I was in Afghanistan and my Oakleys broke. And I wrote him and I said, hey, could you send me a replacement pair? They just broke them. They sent like a whole box, 24 sets of Oakleys, and they weren't even out on the shelves yet. You could
Wow.
write people and they'd send you care packages. It was just a good time, and we felt appreciated. It's not that we don't now, but it was just a different time. And try to explain to a kid now why we're still in Afghanistan. I mean, we could talk about that for a long time. Do I think that we need to completely pull out? I'll say it right now. Absolutely not. We don't need to completely pull out, but something needs to change. I'm not this isn't the format to discuss it in today, but it's just a little disheartening. That's all I'm going to say. And I think that disheartening aspect, especially among the older soldiers, is part of the reason we have the depression and the suicide epidemic we have right now, in my opinion. But that's kind of how I feel about that particular piece. Josh, what do you think? Can you tell us what went wrong in Afghanistan, what went right, so on and so forth?
I think a lot of things went wrong. I tell you, I had never felt more isolated, more depressed than I did right after the attacks. Right. A lot of it had to do with the fact that I was in Honduras. I reached back out to my parent unit, which was in Puerto Rico, because I know what's happening. I know we are going to invade Afghanistan, right? George Bush came out, and love him or hate him, I definitely have my bones to pick with him. But when he came out, and he was like, he stood there at ground zero, and he said, "I hear you, and the rest of the world is going to hear all of us soon." Like it gave me chills. I was ready to go. Dude, I was ready to go invade Afghanistan by myself. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I was like, dude, we are going to go and lay waste, and we are going to go stack bodies, and all I knew that, almost 3,000 Americans lay dead, and somebody needed to pay. Somebody needed to pay. And, my unit was like, yeah, we're not going on that. Like, we're not doing that. It's not our job. Like, we were a Southcom oriented organization, and the only thing going on in Southcom was, hanging out on the beach, drinking your umbrella drinks, and handing out rice and flip flops, in balloons. Is not why I joined the military. Like, I didn't join the military to hand out rice. Like, I joined the Army to go to war. Like, I joined the Army to go. Oh, you guys back at Bragg, you guys were like, yeah, man, I was stuck down there, and I was like, this is terrible. Like, I'm going to miss my chance. I'm going to miss that, that one shot that I have to, hop on top of that vehicle, Blair and, Ride of the Valkyries, into combat. I was just like, I can't believe it's going to go down like this, man. I was like, my dad's going to be so disappointed. And so eventually got to Afghanistan, but, I think we went wrong initially is obviously Operation Anaconda. I think we missed the ball at Tora Bora big time. I think that special operations should have been in charge of Afghanistan from the very beginning. When we turned it over to military, and there's obviously good people on the conventional side. They have a purpose, they have a role and a function. A fight in Afghanistan like we needed to fight was not it, right? That was not their role and purpose. Their role and function is, an invasion of Iraq, a large ground-based war, not a war fought in Afghanistan in the mountains, in an insurgency. Like, that's not what it's just not what the big army is designed for, and that's fun, right? So I think when they allowed, Tora Bora to happen like it did, I think that was the first mistake. We could have recovered from that. And then, like you said, the invasion of Iraq, we got distracted. We dropped the ball on that big time. The job in Afghanistan wasn't done. And, I think that the other opportunity for us to really get out of Afghanistan and leave with, I don't want to say leave with honor and dignity, because we still have honor and dignity. I think to leave with some semblance of, we came to, do something, we did it, and now it's time, is when we killed bin Laden. I think that was the time. It's like, okay, because we have killed a lot of people in Afghanistan, a lot.
Yep.
I mean, dude, it's countless, the number of people we killed. But I think when we killed bin Laden, I think that was our one opportunity to say, we're done. We are done. I think we miscalculated the Afghani population. We went in there with that World War II mindset of, okay, we just destroyed, half of Europe, by carpet bombing it. We need to stay and help, we need to, we're going to free the shit out of you. We're going to free the shit out of you now. And we're going to, build you schools, and we're going to dig you wells, and we're going to do this. And dude, the majority of the people in Afghanistan, they don't give a shit about that. They don't care. They walk 2 miles to get their water. That's just the way it's always been since the dawn of time there. And they're okay with that. They don't want a strong central government in Kabul, right? You have people who have never left their valley, and they never will. They will, they will be born, they will grow up, they will die without ever having left their specific valley, and they're fine with that. And we tried to go in and, put this nation building template on top of them, in a country where the clock stopped in the 10th century. For people who haven't been there, literally the clock stopped in the 10th century in Afghanistan and never restarted. It is truly like walking through the Bible when when you're there, and they don't care about that shit. They don't care about a strong central government with freedom of speech and, freedom of religion. You know what freedom in Afghanistan is? It's the business end of an AK-47. That's what freedom in Afghanistan is. They didn't care about all that stuff. We tried to, force it down their throats, and it went horribly wrong. Do I think we should still be there? We have to be there in some capacity. We have to, as much as I hate to say it, I go back and forth, because every time I hear about, another service member getting killed in Afghanistan, my first thought is, why the fuck are we still there? And then, it's immediate. It's like, we have to deny that space and time for them to operationally plan, right? We have to deny them time and space to operationally plan another 9/11. And now what that footprint looks like to deny that, I don't know.
If I may ask you, I agree with you 100%. But what about this? What about allowing the Taliban to come in and have a place at the table, or even take over the government? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that is one of the most egregious errors, that we could possibly do. Now, I get why we're doing it, but I don't agree with it. I think it's folly to think that we could kick the Taliban out forever. I think it's folly to to think that we could keep them from regaining control, especially the eastern part of Afghanistan. When you talk about the Coast Bowl, because basically we were kept out of the federally administered tribal areas for the most part, minus drone strikes, and then even those became contentious in our relationship with Pakistan, and and we could go really in the weeds in this whole thing, and what Pakistan has done against us, how they've enabled Haqqani and the Taliban through the ISI and everything, and Directorate Directorate S. I mean, we could really, really go into a lot of detail on that, but I don't know. Bringing the Taliban in, it's not going to end. I don't see this ending positively for us. I truly don't. I think bringing the Taliban back in, you turn around and you go back and you look, all the guys and gals who got killed in Afghanistan, like, for what? right? I go back into question for what? And, op after op after op against the Taliban, and now these very same people who, we were trying to capture, kill yesterday, we're sitting down with them and breaking bread. I just
did we go into, and I'm not breaking your bread or whatever you want to call it, bust your balls, but but the Taliban itself is not necessarily why we went in there. I mean, it was because the Taliban were providing a safe haven. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I just don't see a way out of this. I don't see a way out. That's what I'm saying. It's like, well, if like we'd trust like we'd trust them, but if there was some way to say, okay, look, yeah, you're the Taliban, you're hardline, but it's your fucking country. If you people want to live like that, that's fine. But here's the peace agreement: no Al Qaeda, no terrorism. You run your country like you the fuck want to run it, but you attack us, you give them safe haven, we're right back in. But again, I mean, does that solve the problem? Because you believe that shit for a second? No, it's a sticky situation,
Yeah, it's a shitty situation. I mean, it's a big shit sandwich, and at the end of the day, we're going to have to take a bite of it. Or how some people have described it, it's like prison sex. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be. It's going to happen. You're not going to stop it. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be, how much it's going to hurt. No, you're absolutely right. We have to deal with them because they are going to run the country. We have to deal with them. It's just, God, man, it sucks so bad. It is so shitty to God, man, to acquiesce with them and actually sit at the same table with them. But again, man, like I go back and forth. I tell you, when I was, on my rotations to Afghanistan, one of the things that just, it helped, and it kept me focused every single day, even on those days when you're tired. You're like, fucking man, I want to be here. Like, I'm just, I want to go home. I want to go back to bed. Like, I'm tired. Is in the jock, it kept a big screen TV with images from 9/11 on it, and it just cycled through. It cycled through the World Trade Center burning. It cycled through the World Trade Centers collapsing. It cycled through the Pentagon, burning. It cycled through the people jumping out of the World Trade Center, because they rather fall to their death than be burned to death, right? And walking, seeing that was like, that's why the fuck I'm here. That right there. And that gave, dude, that just kind of steeled my resolve every day. It was like, it's time to get to work, and so, yeah, it was Afghanistan, man. It's a graveyard of empires for sure. And Roger brings up a great point. It was supposed to be the Soviet Union's Vietnam, and look who's there. Almost twice the time that the Soviets were. So I'll stop hogging up the airtime and kick it back over to Roger. And
you made
his thoughts on it.
You made a million great points. I mean, how Alexander the Great didn't conquer Afghanistan, so that's how far back we can go, right? But it's one thing you said, and I haven't even thought about it, and this is definitely, especially my boy, as we pay tribute tomorrow to this, is you look at some of the images, and I think one of the most moving images. I mean, when you see people that have literally jumped out of the World Trade Center, I mean, imagine the mindset that you have to have and what's going on around you. It's heartbreaking, and anybody that watches it that was there. I mean, I don't know how you do it without bringing a tear to your eye, but that kind of puts it in perspective. When you look at Afghanistan, and I agree with, I forget if it was, well, I was going to say Josh that said it, or whoever wants the credit for it. Maybe it was Luke, but whoever needs the credit for it, you can ask Ronald Reagan. But I can't remember. I'm slapping myself. I can't remember the book that I read, and it was several years ago. And they said basically our special forces and our SOF had won the war in Afghanistan. I mean, it was done. It wasn't until, and I wish I could remember, it wasn't until I believe it was the 10th Mountain when the 10th Mountain came in. I think it's a 2-star general command up there, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a 3. I think it's 2. But Josh is pointing either 2 or peace. But they basically had a lot of swag. Like, hey, conventional army is going to get into this. And when the conventional army got involved, that's where everything went downhill. So I think you can at the beginning anyway. Obviously, there were a lot of mistakes that went on. The big problem with Afghanistan that I see now, and we've all done several tours over there, it is one. I wish the news would cover it more, and I wish they would cover like Restrepo. I don't know if folks have seen that, and it's not a very exciting documentary, but folks have no idea, and I hate to say this, even the folks in the intelligence community, you have no clue what the environment is like in Afghanistan. I mean, when you talk about, Josh said it, man, when you in the Stone Age, you can't do that because that would be an improvement for these guys. I mean, you just have no idea. And I think that's what brings up the challenges now, is because there is no infrastructure out there. There's no infrastructure. Um, yeah, if you go up to Kabul, which is what they show all the time, right? They show the reporter up in Kabul or whatever, and you've got a couple paved roads and this and that. And now I'll tell you what, I've been all around Afghanistan, and you've got Kabul. That is not the rest of Afghanistan. You come out to where we're at, where Luke's from, out in Apache Junction, and me out here in Queen Creek, and you go to the middle of the desert in Arizona, that is more built up and has more infrastructure than Afghanistan.
Hey,
And
Roger,
I don't think
Roger,
people fathom that.
Roger.
Yeah.
I know you were on assignment in Vegas recently. Did you drive up there or fly?
We drove up there.
Okay, so when I was flying into Vegas, I'd never flown into Vegas during the day. I'm sure you guys have, but I flew into Vegas. That was 2010, maybe. Flying in there, I kind of got the willies because I was looking out the window and it looks just like Afghanistan out in the desert. Sorry to cut you off, but I had to throw that in there.
No, and that's a great example when you look at just there being rugged mountains, not a lot of water, it's that high desert, and just no infrastructure. I mean, think of no cell phone, no electricity, no roads. If you do have a road, it's a dirt road. I mean, there was just nothing. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds and thousands of miles of this stuff. That's Afghanistan for you. And I remember, it takes me back to a story. I'll keep it short, but I had somebody I was working, and we'd lost contact for several months. And obviously it becomes a big deal when you lose contact for several months or whatever. So anyway, it got all the way to the point where, hey, you're going to have to drive out there to find this guy to make sure he wasn't schwacked or whatever. And of course, lo and behold, as we're packing up, getting ready to roll, the guy calls, "Hey, what's going on, man?" Da, 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 da. So I was like, "Oh, thank God!" Right. The report back to the intelligence community, up high echelons, because these folks, a lot of them have never deployed. If they have deployed, it was to, I did my deployment to Germany, right? Okay, so that's not a deployment. But they couldn't fathom. They're like, "Well, why didn't you just call the guy?" I'm like, "Motherfucker, what do you mean? Why didn't you just call?" One, there is no landline. Two, I mean, they had cell phones, right? But I mean, maybe your cell phone works, maybe it doesn't, because the Taliban runs the two cell phone towers that we had on the border, and they shut that shit down at 6:00 at night. And maybe if you call, your dude's hooked his phone up to a car battery earlier in the day where it's actually charged. And I spent tens of pages and phone calls and emails. Like they had this image of AT&T towers out there and Verizon, and for those of us that are old enough to remember pre cell phone days, I mean, that's what it's like, but with no landline. There's no sending this guy an email. There's no sending this guy a text message. I remember a dude that he couldn't tell time. And he's like, I'm like, "Hey, I got to meet you again in 3 days." And, we're going through our interpreter. He's like, "So we have to explain 3 days to this guy." I'm like, "All right, check it out. Fucking sun's going to go up and go down. That shit's going to happen 3 times. Get your ass on your fucking goat, get on the road and ride here. It'll take you 6 hours or whatever." That's the type of explaining that you have to do to these folks, because there just is no concept. And so that brings you the problem now. When you look at force projection, and we've done it all through Europe, we've done it through Asia, we've done it through Africa, and obviously like South America, where you have to keep an American presence. I don't know, like the Taliban thing, you're never going to get around that. They run their country. They're going to run their country. There's nowhere else to go. And that's the thing with Europe. There was already something to rebuild, and there's other places for these folks to go to. In Afghanistan, you were at the end of the world. There was nowhere else for these folks to go. Nobody else will take them. They can't read. They can't write. Half of them can fucking speak, just somewhat coherently. So even an interpreter who's from there could even we used to have a guy that He made up his own letters. Like he would come up with these documents, just pages and pages. And my interpreter's like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck this is. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, he's like scribbling and making stuff up. So, that's the problem is there is no rebuilding. There's nowhere else for these folks to go. So it brings, the lack of infrastructure brings up two challenges. One, Taliban's not going anywhere. And the other piece is there's so little connectivity and so little infrastructure. You're not going to stop the next terrorist group from using that place as a safe haven, because that's like trying to stop, somebody from walking through. We can't stop illegals from going through the middle of the fucking desert out here in Arizona. I mean, you're not going to stop some small cell who's actually motivated and got some capability. So I think you always have to be there. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not sure what that picture looks like. And at the end of the day, folks, I mean, here's the bottom line: democracy is not for fucking everybody. And maybe the answer is, hey, Taliban, crack that fucking whip, lock motherfuckers down, and like Luke said, or maybe I'll give credit to Josh, like Josh said, hey, no more terrorist organizations. Al Qaeda doesn't come back in, or ISIS, ISIL, everybody else. None of that shit happens. If it does, we're coming back in. Because even I know, and I've been retired several years, but even towards the end, you start to see that Taliban pushing them out, because even they're tired of it. I mean, they have nowhere else to go, but they're tired of the shit too. I mean, you've got younger folks, obviously, there's plenty of booger eaters out there that'll continue to fill their ranks. But, when you look at the Haqqanis, the whole reason that the Haqqanis were even pissed off at us was because they were never at the table. And I'm not saying that at the time that I would not have made the same decision, because like Josh said, it's, hey man, you got punched in the mouth and you're ready to fight back and bomb the shit out of everybody. So you're telling everybody, F the world, we're going to do this. So, again, I'm not trying to arm, Monday morning, quarterback that stuff, but I think when you look at bring them to the table, I'm not sure you have a choice. And I think they already have, right? I think they've already, started negotiating some sort of, peace agreement. But again, I don't even know how the fuck you get that out to the rest of Afghanistan. It's not like they're picking up the phone and calling their buddies. There's no chain of command out there. I mean, theoretically you had one, right? But then you've got all these shadow governors and provincial leaders and this and that. And it's crazy. I tell you, watch Restrepo. I think it's on Netflix, something like that. Again, it's not overly exciting, but it just gives you a really good picture of like, hey man, this is like realistic. This is what's going on. And I have some pictures of some of the little cops that I was at and FOBs and this and that, and, combat outposts, forward operating bases. And I'm sure, a lot of our listeners out there that have been deployed several times, they have them just as well. But I show those to my kids. I'm like, hey man, this is it. And that's where your dad was, like right there. It's like, that's it. I mean, you're talking about the old days of shitting in a tub and taking it out back and pouring diesel in it and burning it. I mean, that's how some of these places are. And that's an improvement from what the Afghanis were doing. So, I think that's the biggest struggle that I see out there is is really the lack of infrastructure. We're obviously not going to build anything out there that's going to get them to the 18th century, 17th century, 16th century. So, I guess I'll leave it at this before I kick it back to Luke with maybe some of his final thoughts with 9/11 and just some of the, the tribute and the commemoration of it. I don't know that there's anything we can do to improve it other than, maybe you keep a small force out there. You try to have the Taliban and try to help the Taliban, control the government or control the people or whatever. And I guess that you always have, some military force, but even at that, I mean, like I said, you can't patrol the entire fucking desert. So, I don't even know what that looks like. I know we went off topic a little bit with this. The whole point of this thing is, we always say we're not going to forget. And I get it. We're all tied up in the elections that's going on. And, you got the Woodward tapes now, right? Takes you all the way back to the Nixon years. And, I've got it on tape, which is all bullshit. Dude, I'm fired up about that. We can talk about that later on another episode. But, there's so many other things going on. And believe it or not, and Bush wasn't liked, right? Bush wasn't liked by a lot of folks. And no matter who the president is, there's always half the population that doesn't like whoever the president is. But there was a time and there was a period when we weren't so divided. And I think with Luke and Josh both saying, especially, it's a unique perspective being overseas on how foreigners, foreign nationals, and where you folks were, coming together, waving the U.S. flag and this and that. I remember going to, I was at Vegas back then, going to New York, and out front, and all the foreign visitors that had come out there and, dropping flowers and American flags and T-shirts and signing stuff and this and that. And there was a time when we came together for a common cause. and it's it's kind of long forgotten. And one, you got to remember, 3,000 folks died. I mean, 3,000 people, got on an airplane to go see grandma, granddad, mom, dad, go see kids, whatever, that never made it. And then you look at Flight 93. I mean, that in itself, I think, is us and anybody who served in the military. You always look at, we've all got buddies, close friends that have made the ultimate sacrifice. And you look what the folks did for Flight 93. And it's, I'll leave it at this. I just hope when I look at something like that, that I would react the same way that they did. Not sure I would, not sure I could. And everybody's heard the cell phone calls and this and that, and what was said. But, as soldiers, a lot of times things just happen, and, you get shot at and you take some rounds and whatever, and you shoot back. And that's a little bit easier, right? That aggressiveness that kind of comes out in you. And you're, first time, that happens, like, holy shit, that motherfucker's shooting at me. I'm going to kick his ass, right? So that's kind of that aggression comes out. When you look at what those folks did on Flight 93 to make that conscious decision, true Americans, true whatever nationalities they were that were on that plane that made that decision, helped make that decision. But, I'll leave it to this before I do to Luke. I hope I would make the same decision. Not sure I would, not sure I could, and hopefully never have to.
That's a good point. It's always keep it in your mind. I'll tell you, real quick before I get into the final 9/11 stuff, which I'm pretty worked up about now that I sit here and think about it and start replaying the last 19 freaking years. But Roger used the sun up, sun down trick, and I thought I was the genius who came up with the candy trick. If you got to meet the guy in 7 days, you give him 6 pieces of candy. You tell him to eat one every morning. And then the morning he doesn't have a piece of candy, come meet me. And it was amazing with these folks, man. I guess they're in touch with nature or something, because they couldn't read the time on their phones. But if I told them, hey, you'd be here at 9:00 in the morning, they'd be there at 9, even though they couldn't fucking tell time. It was the craziest thing. It was nuts. I agree with you on the documentaries. Those are great documentaries. But I recently saw a movie based on a true story of Cop Keating called The Outpost. I would highly recommend that to anyone. If you guys haven't seen it yet, check it out. I thought it was, in my opinion, I think that's the best our war movie so far. It's not about special forces. Of course they have the Hollywood thing in there, but they tell a really true story. And the last scene really broke me up. It really broke me up. It was tough to watch. But I would highly recommend veterans, non-veterans, especially the younger soldiers and officers that are, or from any service that are going in. Check out that movie because, man, it's a good one. So yeah, getting back, Roger said something, and that's kind of what started working me up a little bit, because he said, some places aren't ready for democracy. Some people aren't ready for it. And that is absolutely the case. I'll be the first one to admit I used to be the all-American flag waver. Like Josh said, we're going to free the shit out of you. We're going to bring democracy to you, and you're going to love it, and you're going to be prosperous just like us. This is what you need. And boy, I learned that lesson. I think I finally admitted to myself maybe in 2006. I was like, this is bullshit. I mean, Saddam Hussein, will we be better off with him in power right now? I'll argue with anybody. Absolutely, yes. And the fact that later administrations, not naming any names, couldn't see that and couldn't learn from that, with me of my median intelligence can see that, leave the motherfuckers in power, because these places are a fucking mess, dude. Exhibit A, Libya. Exhibit B, Syria. Egypt's still getting their shit together. You can't learn from this stuff, man. Come on. But I get worked up about it, man. Part of that reasoning, what brought me to that of, some people aren't ready for it, was just being more realistic as who beings. We have the capability to reason and think through things, but we are violent people. Human beings are violent, and back in the Roman days, there used to be a phrase that basically, it's civis Romanus sum, which meant I'm a Roman citizen. Everybody in the Roman Empire knew what that meant. If you were up in Gaul or something and you said that, they would let you pass, because they knew if they killed a Roman citizen, the whole might of the legion was going to come out there and mow your shit down. So I really think, our response to 9/11, it wasn't just in Afghanistan. I mean, we all know that. We focused on Afghanistan, but a lot of guys all over the world were doing some pretty heroic shit back then. And I think, in that first year up to 2002, I think just about, I'd go so far as to say is 85 to 90% of Americans were just fucking fine with everything that was going on. Because you know what? You fucked with us. And we're going to show the world what happens when you do that. Now, when I start to get bitter and a little bit upset is when I see the whole entire, well, not the whole entire nation, but a lot of people turning on these very people who are out there getting some and getting some payback and showing the world you do not do this by all means necessary. Do not fuck with the U.S. But we got too many people thinking about it, too many people trying to bash Bush because that's what was important. It wasn't, national security. It was bashing Bush. And Bush brought a lot of that on himself, that administration, by going into Iraq. But still, man, we started thinking about it too much and we started turning our backs on the people who were defending you. It's one of the reasons the movie The Dark Knight really resonates with me is, there were people out there doing God's work. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. And then as soon as they didn't need you anymore, they fucking cast you out. And they're ready to throw your ass in jail. It gets disheartening to me. It makes me think of the world in a more stark way. And, get disheartened, having some good friends like you guys and other veterans out there, and even, the civilians who understand how we think really helps. And getting it out like this really helps too. And, I'll tell you this, if there's another 9/11, I think the three of us are ready to go again, do the same exact things again. Because you don't fuck with us. That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, you guys would pass.
I'm still angry about it.
You guys would
still,
pass the height weight
angry
thing right now, though. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'll go Blackwater with it now. But yeah, it's still mad about it, and I'll pay my respects tomorrow, and I'll remember. I hope everybody else does, and I'm gonna make an effort to try to communicate to the younger generation what this means, because I don't think we as a generation have done a good job communicating to our replacements what that all means.
No, you're absolutely right. And as I sit here and look at, commemorating yet another anniversary of 9/11, Roger pointed it out. I remember I didn't get back to the States for a couple more months after 9/11. In fact, I didn't get back to the States until the end of January or February of 2002 from Honduras. But even then, right? So obviously 9/11 been over for a while. But even then, when I came back to the States, I remember seeing a U.S. flag flying from almost every house, every business. I can't remember seeing a car that did not have a yellow ribbon magnet on the back of it. I couldn't see one. Those any soldier boxes, those things were being shipped overseas, to the folks who, in the invasion for Afghanistan and getting settled in, like those things were going, by the metric ton. And everybody said, never forget. Hashtag me too, pound me too, never forget, right? Never forget. And as the years went by, those yellow ribbon magnets, they got a little sun-baked, a little faded, started cracking. Bumper stickers started tearing off a little bit. Flags got a little tattered. We took them down, didn't replace them. And we lost that moment. That's what we don't have now, and that's what we're losing. That's what makes us Americans. It's not our politics, right? We'll always have people who agree and disagree. We'll always, never agree on anything. That's fine. But you look at it, and, what makes us Americans? Things like the flag. It's things like those feelings that everybody felt when they woke up the morning of September 12th, 2001, when it was, I don't care who my neighbor is. I don't care if they're a Democrat. I don't care if they're an independent. I don't care if they're an atheist. I don't care. They're an American. And the 3,000 of us got killed yesterday. and we are about to go drop the hammer, right? Doesn't matter. None of that mattered. None of our differences mattered. The only thing that mattered is that 3,000 Americans were dead. Ground zero in the Pentagon in that field in Pennsylvania is still smoking. And we're about to go kick somebody's ass, right? And I don't ever want it to happen again, but I feel like we're at a point like that's what it's going to take for us to kind of get some gravity back in our lives and kind of come back together as Americans, because that's what makes us Americans. People said they wouldn't forget, and I hope they didn't. I hope they remember. And I wish there was a TV station out there, a TV channel, and I wish there was a radio station that all they did was play the news, the audio from the news, and play the audio from air traffic control, and play the audio of the phone calls from people who were on the planes, play the audio of Todd Beamer on Flight 93 saying, "Let's roll." Because they weren't going to sit there and take it. They knew that other planes had been crashed into buildings. And they said, that's not going to be us. And that right there, that's that American exceptionalism right there. That is that. I agree with Roger. One of my thoughts on 9/11 was like, I wish I was on one of those planes. Maybe I could have done something. Maybe I would have sat in my seat like a little bitch. I don't know. I don't know. But I would like to think that I would have been right there with Todd Beamer saying, "Let's roll." And I wish there was a TV station that would play images from 9/11 just on a loop forever until the end of time. Show the firefighters running up the stairs of the World Trade Center. Show the people, coming out covered in dust. Show people jumping from the World Trade Centers because they would rather fall to their death than get burned to death. Like that's what should happen, because everybody, I don't care what nationality you were, I don't care what political party you belong to. That day, we were all New Yorkers. We all worked at the Pentagon. We were all Pennsylvanians. That day, we were all Americans, and we've lost that. So before I get all girly here, I'm gonna kick it back over to Roger to close this thing.
Yeah, you're actually making me a little bit angry, because it takes me to people at that time. First responders were heroes, and when you look at police officers, right? I mean, you look at the shit that they are still going through. Countless have died, years after, because of the the asbestos and all the fumes and the chemicals and this and that, and how quickly it's changed to where everybody, is anti-police, defund the cops, this and that. It's like, hey, when shit fucking went down, they were the first ones there. And a lot of folks gave their lives for a lot of people, some of them not even Americans, that they didn't know, because that's what they swore themselves to do. That was their job. That was their duty, right? So it actually kind of pisses me off a little bit. And I'll close out on this with that piece. Of all our canteeners out there, the biggest thing we can do is, we say we'll never forget. Well, don't forget. If you've got kids out there, take a minute. Everybody's got YouTube. Everybody's got Gurgle. Pull up some stuff. You get on YouTube and look up the Falling Man. Okay, that's how serious that shit is. So I'd say, for those of us that, were there and serving at the time or remember it, take that opportunity to, give a few seconds of silence. And for the kids for your kids that maybe were too young or not even born yet, hey, give them some perspective, because even my boy asked now, you talking about all those, fucktards, the damn conspiracy theorists and this and that. And I can't blame my boy. I mean, he's asking questions because he wasn't alive back then. But take a few minutes and just kind of show them, hey, this is what it's all about. And a lot of that stuff, I mean, that's the reason why we're here right now. So take a minute to do that. Onto a lighter subject here. So we got a couple minutes left, and I know. So how long ago did we start this weight loss challenge? 2 months ago,
Well,
3 months ago?
It ended on September 4th, and it was 3 months. I think it was 90 days previous is when it started, right, Josh?
Something like that, 90 days,
Yeah,
give or take.
I think we did. Give or take 90 days.
So we decided to go with the percentage of weight loss. Who's ever lost more weight percentage wise, the greater number would be the winner. And neither one of them. So before the show, and you can actually watch it if you go to our YouTube channel. You can see some of the prelude to this, but we kind of went over some of the numbers, but neither one of them know the percentage yet. And so me being the Asian, and I don't know if this, them being racist or whatever, that had me figure out the math behind this. So here's the breakdown. And the winner of Will's bottle. And I should have actually probably changed these numbers so I could have drank the bottle. But so Luke started at a hefty 214 pounds. He is now a very slim and would you call me last time svelte or whatever
Svelte.
it was? 12 pounds or 202 pounds. So a loss of 12 pounds for a 5.61% loss. Right.
It's respectable.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Now this is close enough that we actually had to carry the decimal. So it wasn't just 5%. So that should tell you how close it is. So Josh started at a humble 223 pounds, ended up at 211 pounds, also a 12-pound weight loss.
Wow.
For 5.38%. So 0.3%. So you know what that is? That dookie you took, and those that watch the YouTube, that dookie you took on the way to work, if you'd have taken that on September 4th, you would have probably won.
Congrats, Luke.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
man.
I'm going to say congratulations, Luke,
Wow.
but in all seriousness, congratulations to both of you. We all joke about, our diet and our health and getting fatter by the minute. Because, dude, I tell you what, I was a well-oiled machine in Vegas. I went to Vegas, right, for 5 days and horse race. Well, I wasn't horse racing. My neighbor was doing some horse racing, and we got to watch. But I was a well-oiled machine in Vegas. And by well-oiled machine, I'm talking about a trash compactor, because my whole vegan thing that was going on. Yeah, dude. As soon as we got in the car, that shit was over with. Because one, I mean, you're on the road, right? It's fast food. You're not going to eat healthy anyway. You get to Vegas, and I'm looking for the fried Twinkies. And what did me in was the beef hot dog. So they had one of the little Vienna carts inside the hotel, and it was the 100% beef hot dogs. And dude, no shit, it was like, that guy was like, it's $1.25 a piece. I'm like, here's a $5 bill, make it happen. So it was that was pretty much my lunch, and it's bad because I had to take off my wedding ring. I thought we were actually going to cut it off. I think the nitrates from all the hot dogs, as my neighbor Steve would say, he's like, you took a lot of dong down in Vegas, but the nitrates made my fingers swell so bad I had to take my wedding ring off. So anyway, congratulations to both of you. Hopefully you guys keep it up. And I think, maybe we'll do a show on some dieting tips or something like that. I don't know. We got to make sure that, one, we're around long enough to continue doing this podcast, and make sure that our listeners out there are around long enough to listen, especially, would you say we're up to 7 or 8 listeners now? So we can't afford for any one of you to actually kick the bucket. That'll be a loss of like 12.5% of our listenership, and could, affect our sponsors. Actually, if that happens, Carlton Zeus might actually say, fuck you guys, and pull his music. So with that being said, we want to, obviously give thanks to all the Canteeners out there that continue to listen, continue to share our stuff. I would tell you that we're actually growing, believe it or not. We talk a lot of shit about the 7 or 8 listeners. We're actually into some triple digits, and we're growing. The YouTube channel is beyond me. I mean, it's we don't really push that outside of what we say here on our podcast, but it's actually growing pretty fast, faster than I'd ever thought. Maybe it's just because people want to see, the fucked up faces behind, the fucked up stuff that we say. One other thing, and we'll take some credit for this. We now have a Parler account. So you can either Parler, and for you dumbasses that are like, well, I spelled it OR because Parler. It's not Parler. It comes from parlay. So you can go Google that shit. But anyway, we have a Parler account. I think our username is Culper's Canteen Cup, and our display name is Drinking Bros. So go take a look at it, and subscribe. We put out some one-liners, probably not as funny or as entertaining as our podcast or YouTube, but definitely check us out. So again, thanks Carlton Zeus, Apple Music, www.carltonzeus.com. Thanks to the listeners, and for all you folks out there, stay safe and keep your canteen cups tightly secured. And for you freemium, that maybe one day if Luke gets off his ass, we'll turn it into premium content. Your YouTube content starts now. It was good episode.
Yeah, I think it was good.
How long was that?
That pisses me off, dude. We got about another 10 minutes before we get cut off here because we have no sponsors. So for you YouTube watchers out there, we get cut off at the 2-hour mark, right? Unless I do individual video feeds. And as you can tell, so none of us can take credit because it'll piss Luke off, but we do all of our producing and all that stuff and editing internal, which you can probably tell by the quality of our shitty video and shitty audio. Yeah, we do all of our editing ourselves, video and audio. So we're on this Riverside FM to do our YouTube feed, and we get capped out at 2 hours. And I don't know if they put 2 hours because it's like seriously 2 hours, or I think the guy actually looked at our stuff and was like, "You guys are fucking boring, and we're not going to let you go beyond 2 hours a week." So,
oh man,
dude, I was getting a little pissed off at the as Josh was talking about the towers and this, and I'm like, and all these motherfuckers out there right now, and talking shit about cops, and I get it, man. There's bad cops, right? Just like I don't care what the profession is. I don't care if you're a teacher, if you're a firefighter, a nurse, doctor. You got shitbags everywhere. And for all this stuff going on, where it seems like half the countries or half the country is defund the police and this and that, and it's like, hey, when shit hit the fan, it's like these were the first motherfuckers that were there. No matter what color you were, it wasn't, hey, let me just save the white folks, right? Because there's systemic racism. We just drug the white folks out of the towers, or we just drug the men out of the towers and we left the women. That wasn't the case, man. It pisses me off.
It was truly. You see the photos, right, of the firefighters,
Incredible.
Everybody's in those stairwells coming down out of the World Trade Centers, and the firefighters are headed up.
Yeah.
People are running down the street out of the area of the World Trade Center. Firefighters and police are running toward. They are fucking literally riding to the sounds of the guns, man. They are running into the flames. And God, dude.
That occurred to you while Josh was talking, or did you think of that before?
No, where Josh was talking.
Jesus, man, because that's a good point, and I that hadn't clicked with me yet, and I'm going to be posting some shit tomorrow about that. I'm going to be that's exactly going to be my theme tomorrow.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's a great point. I didn't think of it until Roger brought it up, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Hey, it's truly insane, man. But it is, dude. It is. People are like, I'll never forget. I'll never forget. And a lot have it, but a lot have. A lot of people have forgotten.
Forgot or don't give a shit.
They forgot or don't give a shit, and I get it. For a lot of people, like the war in Afghanistan, they didn't know anybody that was there. They didn't know anybody that got killed on 9/11. So it was just, it wasn't there. It was just a distraction to them. It was something they heard about in the news every once in a while, So
in 1966, right? I don't know much. I would bet. I'd bet a lot. In 1966, you could show up to Tokyo, Japan, or somewhere in West Germany, and they wouldn't, they'd probably come up and they wouldn't give you a second look, or they might even think you're pretty cool as an American. And that's a stark difference between now and then, because you show up, as you guys know, you show up in Afghanistan, the wrong coast, or out in Kandahar or Helmand, they're going to kill your ass quicker than shit. Because we were fighting civilized people back then, man.
Right.
They were very violent. It was much more violent, a lot more deaths, but they're civilized, man. Like you brought up, they had the infrastructure to build up. Now you fucked up, but we can all be friends now, except Italians. Fuck them. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. All our listeners or all our watchers in Italy.
Yeah. It's bananas, man. It's bananas. So what are you going to do with your 17-year Highland Park?
I'm telling you, if you guys know what you're doing, you will pour that out into 2 bottles, split it, pour in something.
Camel piss.
I'll be like, oh yeah, I guess that's good. I don't know. I'm gonna go back to my Blackbush. I don't know, man. Hold on to it. We'll hold on to it. When we get together, we'll all split it.
And
hopefully,
I'll hold on to it for you.
Hopefully, I'll find out this week that I got that JTTF in Kansas City and make that shit happen, man.
Yeah, then we could start hanging at least like once a year or something like that. You know what?
We could do like man.
All three of us in one room podcast. That'll be like a 4-hour episode at least.
Because we'd all get drunk and would never shut up.
Oh, I know. And that'd be so great. Dude, I tell you what, and I guess we'll get into it a little bit later at future episodes, but like no shit for the whole COVID thing, which we're all in the same sheet of music. It's a lot of bullshit and all that, whatever. Can kill you, yada, 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 whatever. If I don't have COVID from what I went through in Las Vegas on Fremont Street, then it's bigger bullshit than what I ever even thought it was. Because I would tell you this. I have to shoot you guys some pictures. We were on Fremont Street, and there had to be fucking 7,000 people out there, right? And it's, you got a couple people wearing masks, some people not wearing masks, whole drunk, everybody's drunk, sweating, people singing, drinking, and this and that. And I just sat here, and I was with, 3 other folks, my wife and my 2 neighbors. And I just remember sitting there, I'm like, if we catch COVID, this is where we catch it. If we don't catch COVID here, and this, and I know we got a couple minutes left, but it's the one, knock on wood, hopefully I don't get it. I've got a few more days. I'll let the symptoms run its course or whatever. But with the amount of people that were out there on that strip, and then you say, okay, every Friday and Saturday is like that. I'll even like throw out the weekdays where you've got at any given moment 5,000 to 7,000 folks out there. If it is that contagious, if it is that communicable, if it is that deadly, right now the whole world would be fucking dead. Period. With the way it was out there, it was nut to butt. Everybody, you still had your street performances going on, people drunk, sloshing shit everywhere, this and that. They had all the plexiglass up and stuff like that, and you had to wear a mask. But then you've got like 1,000 poker chips everywhere, which of course those things aren't sanitized. But it's the if one of us don't catch COVID from that, dude, it's bigger bullshit than what I ever even thought it was. So
I agree.
Anyway, it looks like we're about out of time. So for our freemium content viewers, again, thanks for watching. I don't know, how you're getting word of us, whether it's from the podcast, whether you're watching or listening to the podcast and then checking us out on YouTube, or you're just some nug at work that's like, hey man, I'm fucking bored and need to find some entertainment and gurgling us. But we definitely appreciate you watching. We ask that you share us. Again, go check out Carlton Zeus. Does Carlton have a YouTube channel? He needs to have a YouTube channel.
He does. You can look him up on YouTube. He has a channel.
So do some gurgling, help him out a little bit, help make a little bit of dough so we can hopefully get a little bit of dough. But thanks for watching. Stay safe and keep your canteen cups tightly secured.